It's very near and dear to my heart. When we originally had set it up, we had set it up for a couple of speakers and a really small audience, and got extremely lucky with several groups wanting to jump on board with it and get the message out. I just want to touch on real quick some of the stuff that we're going to be looking at doing at the federal level in the next couple of years with the amount of states that are going. One of the big things we're going to have to be working on is interstate exchange of marijuana. We want to buy from breweries in Colorado for our dispensaries here in Florida. How do we handle that? What are we going to do about it? We want to make sure that we have good, solid legislation. One of the groups that's here tonight is going to be talking to you guys about an exchange development project that is going to do wonders for the individual states and for what we're going to be doing on the federal level. The other reason we wanted to do tonight is a lot of you may be familiar with Charlotte's Web. That did pass. We do have concerns that it is being used as a tool to drive down the vote for Amendment 2. And by concerns, I mean I've been specifically told that the Republicans are trying to drive down the vote for Amendment 2 with it. So that was one of the big reasons we wanted to do events like this. We're going to try to do a couple more and help these groups get the word out. We got to get Amendment 2 passed if we want to have medical marijuana in the state of Florida. Have to. Charlotte's Web is full of problems. I've been very fortunate to be privy to some of the ways that we're going to attack it. Amendment 2 is the front line of that attack, though. We need to make sure that we get it out to all patients, not just an extremely small subset, and even more importantly than that, not just to an almost impossible growery standard, where I think it's 3 groweries in the entire state can even do it if they want to. So we got to get the word out there. The groups that have come out to talk to you guys tonight are from several different angles. They're going to give you guys a whole lot of information that you can use not only to get your friends and family out to vote who already support it, but also for the fence sitters, for the people who aren't sure. The best way to make them sure that they're okay with this is to be armed with good information. So I'm very thankful to United for coming out, United for Care. Dana Cummings from my party, the chair of the Libertarian Party of Florida. I'm going to mess up the name of your group. The American Marijuana Exchange. Cannabis. Close. FL Can was going to try to get some people here. They may show up at some point. And then we also have a young lady who's going to be speaking on CBDs and the effects for seizure patients. So I'm going to turn it over to United. Again, thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate everybody being engaged, being interested. I will be here all night. You talk to me about marijuana or literally any other federal issue that you want. I can talk to you about state issues, but I can no control over it. So.
Many of you probably know that United for Care is the organization that succeeded in, with the help of 1.1 million people who signed the petition, in getting Amendment 2 on the ballot for November. Amendment 2, of course, will legalize medical marijuana in Florida for patients suffering from debilitating conditions, including cancer, ALS, glaucoma, MS, or Parkinson's disease. And it will ensure that qualifying patients are no longer living in fear of being criminalized for taking the medication that they need. So here we are. An immeasurable number of hours have been put towards this historic moment for Florida. And we can finally say that we have a democratic and fair fight, or democratic and fair shot at legalizing this medicine. And the fact is, of course, that marijuana is medicine. The vast majority of Floridians know this. For these people, medical marijuana is not controversial. For these people, it's common sense, of course, that patients should have the basic right to safe legal access to a medicine that often provides relief where prescription painkillers and other pharmaceuticals do not. It's common sense that licensed physicians should retain the right to recommend a medicine they know to be safe and effective. Those sentiments do translate into high poll numbers, but even as the latest polls tell us that support's running between 70 and 88%, we know that now is not the time to be lazy. There are a few things working against us, in fact. This is a constitutional amendment, of course, and this does require at least 60% of the vote on election day. That is a landslide figure, and that is not easy at all. Only 2 other states previously have actually legalized medical marijuana with those numbers, and the fight becomes even more difficult considering the fact that those who signed the petition, 2/3 are not likely to vote in non-presidential elections. In addition to these dismal figures, our opposition, the No on 2 campaign, has ramped up their efforts to cultivate misinformation, of course, about medical marijuana. And you may have heard casino magnate Sheldon Adelson alone donated $2.5 million to their campaign in June. There's without doubt more of that to come as November approaches. Many of you here tonight may be supporters of our campaign. And if you are, I encourage you to take the first step toward helping our efforts to educate and mobilize voters. You can help in 2 ways, primarily by donating your time or by donating your money. As a volunteer, you can offer services both in the field and at our regional headquarters in Ybor. We need help reaching out to voters in person at events and on the streets. But we also need help with data entry projects and outreach calls, so there's a lot to do. If any of these could work with your schedule, I urge you to sign up to volunteer on our website, unitedforcare.org, or you can actually sign up here tonight on the spot. We do have pledge forms on hand, so you can sign up there. If you work 60 plus hours a week, that does happen, and volunteering your time is not an option, then maybe you have the means to make a monetary contribution to our campaign. That's always very helpful, and again, you can do that at unitedforcare.org. It's very easy to donate. If neither of these are possible for you at this time, simply spreading the word is, of course, a huge help. I would suggest starting in your circles, family, friends, and work your way out from there. You can connect with our regional Facebook page and Twitter account, and just share everything you can. Just get the word out. There are only 116 days until Election Day, and we need all the help we can get. So I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
Sarah pretty much covered all the bases. I'm assuming the vast majority of you are supporters of medical marijuana here in Florida. There are a huge number of conditions which it could cover, such as Alzheimer's, a lot of neuropathic diseases, PTSD for veterans. My dad was in the Army for 30 years. He can't even know about this stuff existing around in his area because he's still working for the government. But if we were to turn the tide in Florida, there's a good chance that we could move it on a federal level as well. And I'm here fighting for him. I'm here fighting for all the other patients who are unjustly being thrown into jail. I'm basically fighting for freedom of choice. Like, that is the basis of the American Constitution, and we need to make sure that our Florida lawmakers are following. So.
To speak about CBD allowance for children. I went through a very rough time with my daughter. She was 14 months old and contracted her first fever. And after her first fever, she had 2 seizures, which they thought it was a respiratory infection. We went to the hospital at All Children's. We were there for 2 days. They discovered an arachnoid cyst in her left anterior cranial fascia, which is it takes up about a quarter of the left side of her brain. And she didn't have any more seizures, so they then sent us home. And the next day, she went into a state that's called refractory status epilepticus, where she is in a constant state of seizures, and they could not stop it. They had to induce a coma called a phenobarbital coma. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to break up a little bit while I'm talking. She was then out for about a day and a half, and they had to put her on a drip called an IVIG infusion, which is a hemoglobin infusion of good blood plasma. And at that point, she was still having seizure activity in her frontal lobe and her temporal lobe, and then it bounced back to her occipital lobe. So on top of basically having a child that lost half of her life in 7.5 days, so she retracted back to a 7-month-old. She was also on 5 different anticonvulsants at the time. So I started looking at all of her paperwork. We were in All Children's for about a month, and there were so many different factors that were coming into her case that just didn't make any sense. She had an upper respiratory, her diagnosis was called parainfluenza 3 viral encephalitis. Children don't generally live through encephalitis. It's usually older people that you hear of having encephalitis. when someone goes through encephalitis, which all encephalitis is a virus that goes up and infects your brain, it completely turns their world around. So when you have a child that has it, and you have a doctor that's saying they're not able to tell if it's her going through her stages of development or if she's actually lost things, it's hard as a parent to say, well, how do I know what you're saying is true? How do I believe that? You can't really go and talk to a neurologist unless you make an appointment, you go there. We don't have very good doctors here. So I was kind of at a standstill. So I got all 3,000 pages of her medical documentation. I started doing my homework, which is how I came into contact with the Dravet Syndrome organization, because the amount of seizures that she had replicated what those children go through, which is where Charlotte's Web came from. Charlotte's Web was taken from, they got the name of the medication or the CBD oil from a girl named Charlotte. Before Charlotte, there was a boy named Jaden, who CNN also follows, which you can go to CNN.com and see all of his stories. He was on about 22 anticonvulsants a day at 2.5 and still having breakthrough seizures. They couldn't figure out how to stop the seizures. The mother had left. The father took his son to California where they put him on CBD. After taking the CBD, he had no breakthrough seizures and had to have no anticonvulsants whatsoever. It's kind of a miracle drug. The fact that when you even go and look up what Charlotte's Web is, all they do is note that it's able to treat Dravet syndrome. With my daughter, she has an autoimmune condition where certain viruses will go up and infect her brain. Her doctors want us to wait until that happens. If you guys all have a smartphone, can you guys take out your smartphones? I'm going to have you go to a website. It's a GoFundMe website. So you're going to go to www.gofundme.com. You're going to have a backslash. You're going to use all caps, and it's please dash help dash and Lola. And on there is our full story. You can read it. There's all the pictures that we've taken, because most people, they can watch it on TV. They can, think that they know what it is. Until you're in that predicament, you have to give your child those medications. You have to go to the therapy. She was diagnosed with 4 different speech disorders at 18 months old. She has what's called a midline issue, where she has a really hard time crossing over to do things, like putting on a t-shirt. She's almost 5 and still can't put a t-shirt on. I had to fight with the school system because they didn't give her a proper diagnosis. Parainfluenza 3 viral encephalitis doesn't exist. The state that our medical insurance is in right now is really sad, so they won't actually go and figure out what it is. 10 years ago they might have. But what I really hope with Amendment 2 is that they take away Charlotte's Web and they add in CBD as a proper treatment for children that have these sort of conditions. There's new ones springing up. And the sad thing is that the neuro world is the up-and-coming medical field to really get into, because that's where the majority of problems are coming from, where people need these medications, but they can't get them. They're also stemming from autoimmune-related conditions. You're not getting passed off to the right doctors because the doctor wants to put their claim to fame on diagnosing what it is, but they're putting children and other people's lives at stake. They'd rather put these children on these medicines that will kill them, that will give them life-threatening rashes, that lower their IQs by 5 points. If you know anyone who has to do any of those things, get them in contact with the right people, with the people who are running this convention. Anyone that knows anything, it's just sad. It's really, really sad.
Could you repeat the GoFundMe?
GoFundMe, it's www.gofundme.com. Your backslash, and then in all caps, it's please dash help dash Lola.
Thanks for being so brave.
Oh, you're welcome. I've been battling this for 3 years, and there's a million things worse than bronchitis. So what's up next, I really don't know, because she is in the school system. I have no choice around that. They won't give us Ativan as a protocol because Ativan doesn't even work for her. And I haven't really met very many people that have been through the same things, so it's nice to be able to come to these events where people are aware. They do know. They don't look at it and say, oh, you want to give your child CBD. Well, I'd rather give my child CBD than life-threatening medications.